legs, I'm not going to say 100% yet, one or the other. A large majority of the church believes it's the Roman Empire, but we looked at the possibility of this actually being the Islamic caliphate that existed for over 1,000 years. And we're going to get more into why that seems to be the stronger argument. Why it is the Islamic caliphate. Now, were these the only kingdoms existing at that time? Okay, we've got the Babylon Empire, but what about the Egyptians? What about the Syrians? What about the Chinese Empire that was busy, going and them doing their thing that side? There were other kingdoms, but God hones into these specific kingdoms. Why? Because of the region. Okay, these specific kingdoms were, they dominated the Middle East. Okay, these specific 4 kingdoms dominated the Middle East. And we will see that other kingdoms will be mentioned later on. We'll get into that. Now, we go from, in this statue, we go from a more costly material to a material that is not costly at all, clay. Some interpretations or understanding could be that we've gone from a more moral civilization, and as each civilization comes about, there's less moral standard. The moral standard drops and drops and drops and drops until we get to that point. That is one point of view you can think of. Also, it's a timeline. Okay? Babylon, Media Persia, Greece, and then either Rome, or I'm going to keep with, from this point on, the Islamic Caliphate. And as we'll explain more why we think it is that kingdom. To the point where we've got the clay mixed with the iron. This clay mixed with the iron, the feet with the 10 toes, and the 10 toes are mentioned specifically, is the kingdom, I just wanted to make this point, is the kingdom of the Antichrist. The kingdom that has not yet, it's a revived kingdom, and we'll see why it's a revived kingdom. It's something that comes from something that existed. All right, so it's not something that's birthed anew, but it's something that is hidden for a time or been suppressed for a time. So there's this last kingdom of iron that sort of is pushed down for a time, and then we have this final kingdom, which is a mix of the iron and clay. And what a lot of guys think is that it's this final kingdom is coming out of, I'm going to say, the Islamic kingdom. It doesn't have the same power or strength that it had in the terms of the Islamic Caliphate was for over 1,000 years. They were very powerful, very strong. We saw the pictures of their reign, of the land they took. They took more land than any other, more land in the Roman Empire, more land than the Greeks, the Media Persians, all of them. But this kingdom that's going to come out of it is not going to be as strong. There's going to be division. It's not going to adhere as strong as it did in the past. All right. So before we dive into the teaching, we're going to start with, this teaching is going to be based on chapter 7 of Daniel and chapter 13 of Revelations. These 2 chapters come together. Now you might ask, but what happened to Daniel 3, 4, 5, and 6? Where are those chapters? What happens is God gives Nebuchadnezzar this dream of the statue. Then there's other things that happen to Daniel. Like, for instance, after God gives Nebuchadnezzar this dream, Nebuchadnezzar thinks this is about him, and he erects a statue. And this is where we've got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that do not bow to this statue. And we have that scenario going on. And we have Daniel in the lion's den, and these other stories, these other things that are happening in the kingdom. But they're not about end-time teaching. It's about very much what's going on with the politics of the day. All right. Now, Daniel 2, Daniel 7 are parallel chapters. Okay? They're talking about the same thing. So as we read this chapter, keep in mind Daniel 2, but Daniel 7 brings out more details. Same as Revelation chapter 13 brings out more details about Daniel 2 and 7. So Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, Revelation chapter 13, are all talking about the same things. Okay. So let's jump into it. Everyone can hear me fine? Everyone good? Okay, I'm going to read through it, and there's so much detail in here, we will unpack as we go. All right, I'm just going to read through the full chapter so we've got the context as we dive into this. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, so Belshazzar is one of Nebuchadnezzar's sons, and so this is quite a few years. If we look at Daniel 2, it's in the first year of King Nebuchadnezzar. It would actually be a second year. His ascension year would have been his first year. His second year, they call his first year. That's just how they did it back then. But this is... Right, everyone's awake.
Yeah.
This is quite a lot of years later, all right? Now it's Nebuchadnezzar's son that's come in. And it's not, if I remember right, he had a few sons, and this wasn't the first son that took the throne. This was the last son. From him, then the Medo-Persian Empire actually take the kingdom from Belshazzar. All right. So in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and a vision of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. So remember, the first dream was a dream to the king, Nebuchadnezzar. Now God's giving Daniel specific insight into that. So it's another dream, but of that original dream. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. When it talks about the great sea, it talks about the Mediterranean Sea. That's the sea that we deal with in the Middle East. And four great beasts come up from the sea, each different from the other. Also, when we talk about the sea, and we'll get into scriptures that deal with this, I might not get into it today, but definitely we'll get into it. When it talks about the sea, it's normally talking about people. It's talking about the Gentile nations. Okay, when we see something coming out the sea, and this specifically mentions in Revelations, the sea is people, multitudes of people. So these kingdoms are coming out of people. All right, I'll just read verse 3 again. And four great beasts come up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. That's an important just point to note, that this 4th beast devours and tramples with the residue with its feet. It was different. This is also a very important part. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the root. So there's 10 horns, and 11th horn comes, and it removes 3 of the original 10. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels burning fire. This is Ezekiel imagery also. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. So a lot, okay? That's what it's trying to say. The courts were seated and the books were opened. I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they and their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I was watching in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man. So this is the first time we have this mention of the Son of Man that I can recall. Coming with the clouds of heaven, he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one which shall not be destroyed. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit Daniel was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the vision of my head troubled me. I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made known to me this interpretation of the things. Those great beasts, which are four kings, which arise out of the earth. Okay, four kingdoms, all right? When we see the beasts, obviously you cannot have a kingdom without a king. So the beasts represent these kingdoms. But verse 18, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever, forever and ever. Then I wished to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, except dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails, which devoured broken pieces and trampled the residue with its feet, and the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth, which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his face. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them, until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High. And the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and laws. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and half a time. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness and the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. This is the end of the count. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. All right, so that is a mouthful that we need to unpack. All right, so let's get into this. We have this vision, and the essence is 4 kingdoms. Once again, correlating with Daniel chapter 2, the 4 kingdoms. We are going to zone in on the 4th kingdom. So the beasts represent a kingdom, and we see the horns represent kings here with the 4th kingdom. As the 4 beasts are revealed, they perfectly parallel the 4 kingdoms in Nebuchadnezzar's dream of Daniel chapter 2. All right, let's just break it down, each kingdom. All right, the first beast. The first beast is a lion with eagle's wings. This corresponds to the head of gold. Okay, so we have the head of gold and the lion. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, his wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. Now, this can seem very confusing. What does it mean? All right, well, who represented the kingdom of Babylon? When Nebuchadnezzar is given this dream, Daniel says specifically, you are the head of gold, King Nebuchadnezzar. What happened to King Nebuchadnezzar? King Nebuchadnezzar was full of pride. And God said to him, if you don't change, something's going to happen. And Nebuchadnezzar actually loses his mind. And it says his hair grows like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails grow like the claws of an eagle or a lion. What happens is that Nebuchadnezzar looks out and he looks at the splendor of Babylon, the hanging gardens of Babylon, this great, majestic kingdom he's built, and he says, look what I have done, what I have achieved with my own hands. He says, in that very hour, Nebuchadnezzar lost his sanity. And he then went into the bush and he was living amongst the animals. And it says for a time of 7, a cycle of 7. It doesn't say for 7 years or 7 months or 7 weeks. It says it's a cycle of 7. And after the cycle of 7 happened, it says that Nebuchadnezzar looked up and he acknowledged God. And there's actually a very beautiful section in Daniel. I don't know if it's Daniel chapter 3 or 4, but it talks about this, what Nebuchadnezzar actually writes down and how he acknowledges the true God. And it's quite an amazing portion. So this, I believe, is referring to that. Is a man that becomes like a beast, but he's raised up. After he acknowledges the true God, he's raised up and he's given the mind of a man back. So it's referring specifically to what happened there to Nebuchadnezzar. Also, why a lion? Nebuchadnezzar himself is referred to by the prophet Jeremiah as a lion from the thicket of Jordan. And this Jeremiah 49, verse 19. You can go have a look at it. Also, over 120 lions fashioned out of a colorful glazed ceramic brick decorated the processional way of the ancient capital of Babylon. And we can see a picture of inserted there underneath that slide, processional way. So this is parts that have been cut out. When Daniel got the vision, he understood this lion represented and who it was referring to. The imagery we see here, God uses what is understood by the people at that time. The symbols are used on their flags and so on. So the lion represents Babylon. Okay, the second beast, the next kingdom to emerge, is portrayed through the symbol of a lopsided bear. Okay, the bear with one side raised. We're just going through this to see that it's not just these crazy images, but it was referring specifically to the kingdoms. This is going to help us understand the kingdom that's to come. When we read it, we need to understand the background. So the verse said, and behold, another beast, a second one like a bear, it was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. So which kingdom would this refer to? The next kingdom? The Medo-Persian Empire. We had the Babylonian Empire, then the silver breast with shoulders and breast, which is the Medo-Persian Empire. The lopsided bear represents the Medo-Persian Empire, of which the Persian portion was much stronger than the Medo portion. So we had the Medo-Persian Empire, but the Persians, they started out a smaller kingdom, but they grew to be a much stronger, much more powerful kingdom than the Medes. That's why the bear is lifted up on one side. Okay, the one part of the kingdom is stronger than the other. The 3 ribs in the bear's mouth could be symbols representing the 3 provinces of Media, Persia, and Babylon. What happened is the Medo-Persians took Babylon, so the 3 ribs could represent this coalition, or well, it's not quite a coalition, but the 3 empires that now make up this Medo-Persian kingdom. All right, they also take the Babylonian Empire. That's one understanding what it could be. So all the information is given is not just by chance, but it's given there for a specific reason. The third beast to emerge is a 4-headed leopard.